Okay, this is a Monroe CAA-10. This seems to be in kind of okay shape. I mean, I've got whatever buttons and like knobs missing. That's fine. The thing I'm most worried about is the dented little cover for this extended carry over here. I didn't even know that this thing had an extended carry until I really looked at it and after I got it and see that because the CSA that I did a video on recently did not have the extended carry. And I didn't know that they had added this feature until the redesign in the 60s. But hopefully that's okay. I don't think there's any gearing on this side. I think it's mostly on the other side that's an issue. So I'm gonna get this thing apart and hopefully it's not too bad. This I'm not sure what this transfer lever is gonna how complicated that's gonna make the multiplier register. I took that apart last time and I'll probably end up doing that again this time. But now that I have more experience with that, hopefully I'll be able to get into it a little more. It does have the negative multiply button, so now I have the full range of all these buttons down here that I really was wishing I had with the CSA. Unfortunately, this plate is no good. But I think I'm gonna just take the one off the CSA and to cut some holes in there and maybe cobble together one fully functional and maybe a little less dented up Monroe that I can use because these things are, in my opinion, the Monroe with this style of multiplier up here. I really think this is the most practical setup for doing math that requires multiplication of something with a bunch of decimal places. The ability to enter that with the same keyboard, see it up here, and adjust these decimal indicators so that you can have it spit out the answer in a way that you can easily divide it then later is just I don't know. Maybe I'm just more used to it, but I really appreciate this setup as opposed to something like the Martian over here that, I mean it's cool, but like I really and this is kind of lame compared to this. I mean it really just it kind of looks blah, but I really appreciate Monroe for the simplicity of a lot of these things, like the carriage, and the fact that there's bales down here, and you got the little Leibniz split drums up here. But I'm gonna open this up and get into it. Okay, so once again, super happy with Monroe for being like the most reliable brand I've ever worked on. This stuff is it probably took me only 3 or 4 hours of just going through and getting the stuff that was just seized up lubricated, and now it's working pretty well. Um, this motor was very seized, and not like seized in that I had to take it apart sense, but I had to move it around quite a bit before it would even, make a full revolution. But now it's fine. Um, I think this machine didn't get very much use, and one of the things that was pretty shocking to me when I took the cover off was on this helical cam here for shifting the carriage. All of the grease on this was like this. For one, I didn't really clean this at all, so it's pretty clean, and all the grease still has the like peanut butter color of conventional oil getting waxy, but it wasn't dirty. All the dirt was just in the parts that were exposed from like the cracks of the case, kind of. So I'm thinking this machine might have just kind of sat, like someone bought it and like maybe whatever used it a few times, and then it just sat in someone's attic for, well, let's see, I guess like 60 years. I think this was a mid 50s, maybe late 50s. But anyway, I took the carriage off, and I wasn't expecting that I was gonna just do that once, so I'm gonna have to take it off again here, and I'll put a good little demonstration on this one. It's basically the same as the CSA, except for the multiplier on this one having the little transfer shift lever, making it a little more annoying. But I am having the same issue I had with multiplication that I had on the CSA, and I wasn't able to get a good shot of that. But I think I'll be able to get a better shot of that this time. So with this one, especially with this slide, you can expose the multiplier, this end at least, pretty easily while it's still on the machine. And this little floppy uh, plug thing on the end of the spring. So this is the spring that holds all the little keys in place. And I'm going to take this apart again, but this thing right here, I had the same issue when I took it off. I tried to stretch the spring out. I ended up breaking the spring a little bit, like I bent it, and now this is kind of not very tight on there. And I knew I'd have to loosen or shorten the spring. I didn't want to do that, and I'm going to have to do it anyway. But just to go over a couple things here before I get the carriage off. One of the things that was seized up pretty bad was the keyboard clearing, this little lever right here. And I talked about that in a video I just made of the CSA for doing the repeat versus non-repeat edition. So when I got this was seized up. So repeat edition would work, non-repeat jams up, but it's because that was stuck. So it was pretty easy to get that loose. Let's see. I mean, honestly, this thing is really very similar to the CSA, apart from the multiplier here, which honestly I'm kind of shocked how similar this thing is and how it's able to do a back transfer. But let's see. I think everything's pretty good. I'm going to demonstrate the actual multiplication issue I'm having now for what that looks like. And it's right now I'm having it mostly just on the first digit or position 1. The rest of these are basically fine. But let's say I wanted to do 33 times 1 right there. I think this should work. Oh. Is it? No, that's weird. Alright, well that was something, I don't know. But that worked. But once I get to a higher digit on this one, like a 9, it will probably do that. I guess I'll clear everything. Oh, okay, so that worked. Maybe it'll do it if I do it a couple times. Dang it. Alright, so basically to describe the issue, it wouldn't stop once it got to 9. It would stop maybe like 11 or 10. Sometimes it wouldn't stop at all. So with this first digit, the spring is connected in a different way. It's really unfortunate. I was doing this a bunch of times yesterday, and I was like, great, I'll be able to make a video of this. But now it's fine. Oh well, you know, these things are always, whatever, intermittent issues are always super fun to deal with. Maybe I'll get lucky this time. Well, seems to be doing, that one didn't enter properly. That's not good. Maybe I can, dang it. Nope. Okay, well, at least you get to see this thing working. Oh well. Here's this thing running, I guess. I might cut some of this video out because this was not supposed to be this long. So I'm going to get a shot of the back transfer for the multiplier working before I take the carriage off again. And that's pretty, honestly, it's pretty simple how they do that. When I got this thing, I was really excited about the back transfer because you don't usually get that on, I mean, any machine really. That's kind of like the holy grail of what these things can do. But to demonstrate that working, we have the little back transfer slide thing here. So if I have a number in the accumulator, if I'm not in the first or home position, then if I hold the whatever back transfer slide to the left and hit the clear multiply button, it transfers what's in the accumulator to the multiplier. And with that, I mean, that's really useful for doing continuing on with a multiplication. Like if I had like 3 times, 4 times, whatever, I could keep going without having to re-enter the number in the keyboard. You know, obviously the counter would have been the holy grail of, okay, now I can take a quotient and then do something with it. With typically once you divide, you can't do much with that. But I'm going to show how that works. Really all they're doing, which is pretty ingenious with this little multiplier. Oh, I can't move it while it's Got something in there apparently, but with the little transfer gears on the back of the multiplier, they're either going to mesh with the keyboard or they're going to mesh with the accumulator. And so when you clear it, so let's say I'm going to go ahead and just have this clear itself out. But when you clear the accumulator, you are turning these wheels back to zero, and you're also turning them basically backwards in relation to this. So these are kind of a reverse gearing. So let's say I have this, like, I don't know, move this over. I don't think you're supposed to do this, what I'm about to do, but you can technically do it. Let's say I have a, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 in there. Nope, let's not do that. Oh, come on. All right. It's not letting me move it right now because it's very upset. There we go. Like I said, I don't think you're supposed to do this, but I'm going to enter 4, 5, 6. And it entered 6, 5, 4 in the multiplier, which is not supposed to happen. But you can see that because this is geared in reverse, we're getting the complement numbers. The way this works is when you clear the accumulator and these gears are meshed, it's just going to take 6 and put it in this. Which is, I mean, it's easier to see when I have this thing taken apart, but I gotta hand it to Monroe for like this design of this multiplier. The fact that you can enter it with the same keyboard, you don't need to have like a complicated Frieden separate multiplier module. There's not a Monroe little on the fly thing. Like the fact that this is right there and it's so simple. I don't know. I'm really a big fan of using these things here.
Okay, so right now I'm attempting to remove the keyboard, and I'm hoping that I'm successful because this has been a little harder than I thought it would be. I haven't removed any of these front components yet, which look like I'm going to have to do to remove the springs, at least, what is it, these larger ones, and the little pins going through these levers. There are only like 6 screws that directly hold the keyboard in that I can see so far. It's just the easy ones on the top, there and there, and a plus sign, plus button. This one was really hard to get to. They were all hard to get to, but this one, if I can get a shot of this. Yep, okay, so it's this larger screw, and there's all this stuff in the way that I wasn't able to move. The hardest one by far, this one back here, I had trouble seeing that there was a screw back here at all, but I've kind of left it hanging out of the hole, and it's not going to want to focus on it. Okay, there's my thing. I'll use this. It's right there, kind of behind that spring. You see it. I don't know how I'm going to get that back in. I hope it doesn't fall out because that was a nightmare. There's that one. This one, which also is attached to this lever. Oops. Focus. This lever right there. So I'm just kind of letting that sit like this. There's like a spacer that holds it kind of in place there. And then, I don't know if I went over this one yet, but there's that one was like directly behind the spring, and I didn't bother taking the spring off because that was not going to be. Again, I feel like this was not meant to be done without removing like half of these control components on the right side, especially. I'm just doing it because I know from experience with Monroe's that, you know, this is. I can't really get to much on the bottom with this. It's really hard to even find anywhere to grab onto this, let alone like something to rest it on. So right now, this is the best I can come up with. I'm hoping that I can get this out and then get access to clean and lubricate everything else. But so far, it's looking like those pins on these little like multiplication, division, operation buttons up here. And then hopefully this longer lever I can get to kind of move out of the way. But I'll get an update here as soon as this works or screws up real bad.
Okay, so I was able to get the keyboard removed. The only lever I had to pull out of the keyboard was just the negative multiply right here. Just that was too frustrating to try and deal with getting that out of that little post. But it's working fine with that still on there. Here's the front of the keyboard. All these little springs are in the locations they're supposed to be. This is just where that one came from. But in terms of removing this thing, there is the hook-shaped 0 button things here. So you can see these are all hook-shaped and these are all the normal kind. So right now I've got a couple buttons. I think the 6 is pressed down. So the clearing normally, when the operation clears, we have that. So that cleared, I think, all of them. Yep. And the zeros, we have the this clear, but we also have this giant thing here that when you hit the clear button, pulls down and clears, or pulls them down basically. So these get stuck like this during a clear. When you perform an operation, they stay up after it's cleared. Anyway, pulling this thing out wasn't too bad other than just pulling it up and out. I'm a little concerned about getting it back in. Just That's just how these things are. It's like, oh, that was really easy, and then getting it back in is always the fun part. But just to point the operations out in here in case anyone's trying to fix one of these. The camera's reversed, so let me do like a fancy little, yeah, check that out. Okay, so this little thing right here is supposed to be more like that, or I guess kind of more like this. It's the little hook thing that hooks into a little slot on the keyboard from the bottom. So this little slot right here comes in from the bottom. And during operations, it gets actuated. So I keep it up here because if not, it'd be flopping around too much. I'll show that. So there that goes. I think the RPM might be set a little high right now. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's the little hook thing. The screws that you need to take out, we have this little one right here. That's the one I was pointing out that was really hard to see. It's still kind of in there a little bit. I probably need to try and yeah, okay. So it doesn't fall out. That's the screw that holds it on this side. I put a little nut on it because it holds in a lever with a little spacer thing. And then there's just those two up there. I think those are pretty easy to see. So this looks pretty similar to an LA inside. I'm going to point out a few of the internal, I don't know, linkage movements here in a second. Okay, so I wanted to point out an important screw here, which would be really hard to see if you were just trying to find it yourself. But this is this little black-headed screw right there. So this is like the left side of the machine, and it's kind of wouldn't see that from, parallel with it either. But that's attached to the clutch yoke, and that is, well, I'll do a plus and minus here. So that's plus, that's minus. So the clutch yoke has little ridges where it rests in one direction for subtraction, the other one for addition. And honestly, it's like so hard to see this thing in here that I'm not going to try to do that with a camera here. But looking inside the keyboard, that screw is, okay, this is, basically what that screw is, if I can get in here without shocking myself. So this little thing right here, you see there's a slot, and there's like some little gap where I have my little poker stuck. This can be adjusted to either side of that gap, so you can get that aligned where it needs to be. And the black screw I pointed out is how you'd loosen that and then tighten it. So you can see when you do an addition, that gets moved down, and for a subtraction, it gets moved the other way. So if the issue you're having, which I had on the LA, but I'm assuming it would be probably just as common on this. So where the plus and minus, I guess, button alignment, there's so many vocabulary mistakes I'm making. But this has to be right in the middle. That thing has to be adjusted just right to where you can just add and subtract with these buttons. If it's adjusted too far one way, you might be able to subtract, but you might push the plus button down and you get nothing, or vice versa. That just has to be kind of right in the middle for plus and minus to get activated properly. The little mechanism that clears the, or basically resets the clutch yoke, bumps it back to the neutral kind of middle position, is attached to a linkage. There's a system in here that's nicknamed the duck, and it's like this kind of thing in here. Frankly, that's you're having an issue with that. I apologize because there's so much stuff on this side that even if you knew exactly what you'd be trying to point out, I don't want to disassemble this side, and it's definitely there's just too much stuff piled on top of it. The good news is the CAA has a service manual, so the fact that I'm butchering terminology here, I have absolutely no excuse for. But I just wanted to point that out in case, that's an issue I've had before on these. And if I was having it on this machine, I would not even know where to start. Okay, so removing the carriage on this one, um, I think you can technically do this without removing this plate first, but I would really recommend doing that just because you can see what's going on under here, especially the hook. But the first thing you want to do, I've already removed the little decimal slider bar up here, and then there's some larger screws on the sides. But the first thing you have to do is remove the slider thing, which I'm not sure how much I tightened this one. But I'm going to take this off, and I don't know, maybe I can speed the video up. If not, I'll just make a cut.
That would look really pathetic if I was, yep, okay. This one right here. Yep.
Alright, so that is all the screws there. Of course, we have all of these little silver screws up here. You can, like I said, do this without moving the carriage over. But I'm going to go ahead and take these out, probably off of the video. Okay, so I got all these screws removed. I'm going to show the back really quick. This thing's a little annoying to work on because there's nowhere to grab it. You kind of have to just be really careful where you're grabbing this thing. But so we have a little, whatever this is called, a flap right here and one on the other end. If you can move the carriage manually, assuming that there's nothing like meshed or jammed, because when I got this thing, I had to remove this without use of the motor or the ability to move it. But if you can move it by popping this up far enough, and then, nope, okay. So I can't do that on mine either. So I'm just going to assume that you're having to remove this without use of the motor. Which is fine, but we're going to go over that here. I would recommend, on the other machine, I thought it was easier to take the shafts out first and then deal with the front, but we're just going to do it this way. So there should be nothing preventing this from sliding at this point. So with that, you can kind of lift it up a little bit and try to slide it over to the right. You're not going to be able to get it over to the left because there's a little, this is a thing that tells it that it's hit the other side. But anyway, sliding that over. This is where this becomes a much more frustrating task than on the CSA, is that we have this little lever right here. Which in this case, it's just kind of a matter of trying to get it unhooked from the other side right here, which is not fun. But if you can get that unhooked right here like I've done, then you can slide this back over and kind of try to get it. This is where, like I said, it's not a whole lot of fun. Kind of, come on, man. There we go. Okay, so I was able to get that out. Like I said, that's not really. There's the hooks down here that I was talking about, one on this side, one on this side. It's easier to get one out than the other. If you can move this over, then you can shift the carriage to the right and then move the multiplier around or get this moved. I don't know. But now I'm going to show the next part, which is We have the hook right there. That's kind of hard to see. That hook. This thing really stinks. There's a bunch of little spots that have to be totally perfectly aligned for this to stay in place, and it's probably not going to stay in place for you, so just watch out when you're putting it back on. But now I'm going to go ahead and remove the shafts in the back. Okay, so on either side there's two shafts, and each of them come out from their own side, so these little flaps on the side. This one you kind of have to loosen a little more than the other one because it has to clear the little nut right there. I'll move that out of the way. And with this, all you have to do is just pull it out on the other side. So I'm going to try to just pull it out. Now this has to mesh, or it has to, whatever, these grooves have to go here and with this little linkage right here. So when I pull this out, it's going to drop down, which is fine. You just have to, get it back in the right spot. Mine's not even dropping down, so better than last time. So I think this one's the shorter shaft. No, this one's the longer shaft. One on this side is a little longer, and then turning it. All right, same thing over here. And yep, okay, that one dropped out. I was putting a zip tie in here because I was worried that I would not, be able to figure out how this goes, but it just has to, it's not too bad. There's a couple of grooves there. But once this is removed, this thing is only connected by, there. I need to take the cord out. This is stupid. All right. Now it's only connected to the machine by the hook, which is this thing right here. So all you need to do is kind of pull this. Okay. Yep, that's great. I'm taking this off, apparently. Come on. Okay, so there we go. And now we are fully disconnected there. There's the little thing that was flopping around. That's where the hook goes in. Let's see. I think that's pretty much everything to remember. Just when you're putting it back on, this would be step one with making sure that hook is properly in place. All right, so here's the carriage with all of the little numeral wheels removed. This was really easy. I almost didn't do it because really, I mean, I didn't need to take these off to do much besides maybe cleaning up the plastic little wheels a little bit, but it was very simple. These are just little 1/16 inch shafts in here. This is just a piece of aluminum. I've got the original shafts installed at the moment. This is a original shaft from a rusty Comptometer Model J that held those number wheels. So, case in point, it was not nearly this difficult to remove, and I have this now to do things like this. But I guess I'll start off with the number wheels and then try to do something with the multiplier, and then I'll try to get some shots of just as much of this as I can with everything removed and maybe try to explain all these little parts. It's a pretty simple carriage, all things considered. I mean, this was it's probably my favorite part of this machine is just being able to see this and pretty much understand how everything works. Okay, so I installed one accumulator wheel on the end right here, and then one counter wheel, which is kind of hard to see right there. And I'm pointing it out from this side first so I can show that the actual registers are slightly different. On the counter, we have these little, it's like a split disc on this part of the gear thing, and then on here we just have a gear. And that's going to be for the clearing. So these are held, the actual number wheels are held in position by these little spring levers, and this spring just runs the whole length of the thing, and all these little tabs push on it, so it's going to be pushed, holding the counter number wheels in place. So if it's like halfway between a 1 and a 2, this will push it into like one of them, hopefully where it's supposed to be. And over on the accumulator, we don't have that long spring that runs the length. We have individual little springs. So this is I'm barely moving this at all. I mean, like, I'm like, just like, whatever. So there's really not a whole lot of, these do not need to be very tight, I guess. There doesn't need to be a whole lot to get these to be able to rest in the right position. I had no issue with this part. The wheels themselves are shaped a little different between the counter and the accumulator, and that's just for how this thing clears. Um, so let's see. I got a counter wheel right here. These have a cylindrical shaft thing running all the way through. And the accumulator, which I have to take off my shaft here, is they all have these little cam lobes that are pointed, I guess, kind of at like the 7 and 8. Really, this is supposed to be vertical, kind of. That's where they align when you clear it. So to show how the counter clears, you do have to worry about timing when you take these out and put them back in. It's really not that bad. It's just this has to be in this position to mesh with that gear, because the little slot and the little slotted ring on that side of each little geared shaft thing is going to position the clear position. But so right now it's I can move it around. Nothing. It's just a little spring tabs thing I pointed out. And clearing this, we have this upper shaft that rotates that way. So um, I guess that would be in the positive X direction, whatever. And we're going there. So if I push this hard enough and correctly, there we go. That just pushes the gear into the right position, which is locked in there, so that the zero will be in the right spot when it's cleared. Which, there we go. So that's pretty simple. The accumulator is a little more complicated with these little lobes that are positioned downwards. So I've got this right here. These, obviously, the wheels themselves, these transfer gears don't have a home position, I guess. These are not going to get this thing cleared. Sorry. So the clearing mechanism on this works with all these little plastic, uh, complex geometry looking cammed things right there. So I'm going to turn the shaft there to clear. So these do an interesting motion following that little groove. So kind of demonstrate that. Let me focus this. So there's I'm just going to turn it again. I guess that's, actually that's in a negative X now. But put that somewhere and clear it. I think that's good. Follows the path. Now cam lobe, no matter where it is going to get stuck. And then when this thing goes up, which is hard to do, there we go. Yep, and it gets vertically aligned, which zeroes it out. So the only specialty item here, the one unique little thing that I had a lot of issue with on the CSA I worked on, because I didn't know that this was a thing. There is this one silver lever spring-loaded thing on the accumulator right here, and it has a tab. The rest of these do not. That is for everyone's favorite wheel, the what is this? It's the half-cent lock, I believe is what they call it. So that's this wheel. This is the only unique wheel in the whole thing. And the idea with this is that actually using this, you hold this down, which locks the wheel from spinning, and then you clear it, and it should set a different number to be the home clear position. And very simply, how that works is we just have this disc inside here. So the rest of these just have the one little cam lobe that's just molded plastic, and then this one is movable. So I think I moved it earlier, but this one is zero. Um, yeah, so the zero is like it's like kind of at the 8 sort of. This one, the lobe is pointed in between the 1 and the 0. So when this thing is held down by your hand on this thing, when you're clearing it, this is kind of hard to do. I needed pliers, but this gets reset. Yep. And then it falls on the floor. It's not even that interesting. I'm just really wanting to demonstrate this because it does this. Yep, you hear it clicking? It's resetting it. That's how that works. And you'll never use this, like, ever. Realistically, that's like the stupidest feature of this whole thing, but that's how that works, and I really hope this thing doesn't break because I don't even think you could put a normal wheel in here. I might try to do that and just nix this all together. Okay, so I guess I need to point this out because I think I've forgotten to do that a bunch of times. This is the screw or the spring that I had issues with on both the CSA and the CAA. It's this one right here. You can see it's kind of split. There's a little hole that it runs through. It runs through the whole length of this thing and gets attached right at the end, right there. That is important for the position of these wheels being held in place, triggering the next, whenever it goes to 0, moving on to the next digit, indexing it. But I had to, on this one, pull the spring a little bit farther through all of these, and I actually broke the spring myself because I did not remember that all of these, so every one of these wheels from this one to the end in that direction has a little groove for the spring to move that holds this down. So these things are held down by the spring, little arms. Except for this one, there is no groove right here. So if you push this, you move all these up, you move this one up like I did, you break the spring. Fortunately, all of these are held in enough by the spring at this point. I didn't need to, remove this cap, shorten the spring. This is maybe going to be a little bit of an issue, but I doubt it. I think it's fine. It's kind of loose right there. But I think I was pointing out the back transfer earlier in the video, and to give an idea of that. So here's little transfer gears, and these are going to mesh with these. See, that's why this is so hard to move, is that these are going to be meshed that way. So for instance, it says you can only do a back transfer from the carriage to the multiplier when it's not in the home position. So assuming we're not in the home position, you hold this as far as you can, the manual says, to the left. Now we have the transfer gears meshing with these little multiply transfer gears, so a lot of transfer going on. And these transfer gears will be meshed with the accumulator wheels, which I probably should have put one of those in there. That's for the counter. But you get the idea. This goes to 0, that moves this, which moves this, which moves the multiplier. And we've accomplished back transfer pretty easily. I think this is a good system here. The other kind of mystifying thing about the multiplier, I think, is you can see that each wheel, I'll try to get a little closer, each one of these wheels has a gear on this side and a gear on the other side. And this one right here, you can kind of see the spring loaded, the spring, it's a torsion spring that's in between these two for every one of these wheels. So the cool little system that like resets the multiplier so you can continuously multiply by the same number, so you don't have to, it just, it'll keep this number in when it clears. When you push this down, that's what engages that, and you can see that pushing that, or do it this way, pushing that down engages this long rack, which is this, it's this rack right here, this one that's moving. It's kind of hard to see the rack. I don't know why that is. It's moving down. Yep, there's the rack. And on this side of the rack, which I'll have to move this, which is usually not very easy. Give me a second here. So this has to clear a lot of stuff to be able to move. You kind of got to finagle it around. This is the unfortunate part of this. Come on. All right, so at some point, after struggling, anyway, okay, I'm not going to move it over. But you can see the rack now, and you can see it's kind of stuck because I have it like this. This end of the rack has these teeth in it, so that's why it's a rack instead of just a bar. And these teeth are going to mesh with the back side Oh man, this is not going as good as I wanted it to with this being. Yep. So we're gonna. I'm getting this done. I'm sorry. This is happening. I'm tired of having this thing apart. I'm just gonna make it happen. It's gonna move. There we go. It has now moved. Got it off. So with the stupid. All right, there we go. The rack. Anyway, moving on. The rack, aforementioned rack. These teeth on the rack mesh with the gear on the right side of the multiplier wheel. So this gear I'm moving meshes with that. So when that has been meshed, which I'm going to have to get this back, but if you're devoted to learning about this, then I'm sure that's not an issue for you to watch me struggle with this a little more. Yeah, okay. Again, I forgot what I was doing. Okay, wait a minute. Yep, yep, okay. So the rack is meshed. Now it's meshed. Rack is meshed. When I move the multiplier wheels, interestingly, this wheel is locked. So we got the spring-loaded deal there. You can see that when I release the bar, so let's say I have all of these set to some arbitrary number that it's like the other side, but those are all set. The rack is on, so they're all held under spring tension right now. When I release, oh, and you can't see that. Basically, the other ones spring back, maybe just one of them, and release. That's still too fast. Watch the right side gear. There. They release. So that's how that works. This thing is just like 3 gears and a spring per wheel, and then there's like the rack. But really, most of this is not too bad. Like I said, I don't want to take this off. I mean, this thing is in a modular sense, it's easy to get to the modules, and some of these stuff they did a really good job with. I didn't have to disassemble this more than that, really, to get to like basically everything. The multiplier is held together, point this out, by this guy, and unfortunately, this is going to hinder the geometry here with me removing this bar. And realistically, I don't think that most people probably will need to do that because all that does is hold this plate on, and these are pretty well accessible. I think I showed earlier you can kind of pull it off a little bit, but really 90% of the issues I had with this thing, have had with this thing, all came down to this spring and not holding these levers properly or holding the multiplier wheels in position, or just that they're jammed or like sticky and they just need to be lubricated a little bit. But I think that's about everything I can say about the multiplier. Okay, when I reinstalled the carriage the second time, I had this little link in here incorrect. There's a little linkage that goes from here all the way to the upper dial shaft, clearing shaft right here. So when I clear that, this moves down, this moves up, is another link, and then this moves down. So I did not know this, but there is enough degrees of freedom on this whole linkage here to where I can have this put in correctly in the sense that it will fit with these two little slots on the shaft. But it was this linkage, there was a link in here that was positioned wrong. So basically when I hit clear the upper dials, once it got to the bottom of the little movement here, it jammed so bad that I had to disconnect this, disconnect that, and basically use like a punch and like beat the shaft out of this side of the carriage, these little metal pieces here. So these got bent pretty bad. I bent them back as good as I could, but that also led to basically every other adjustment on the carriage moving this way. I have a little vector here, this direction, and also vertical. And so I had to make a bunch of adjustments. Just, I guess, word of warning when you're installing these shafts and these things that will little loops will fall down. They do need to be in the right position, and there's you can definitely have them in the wrong position like I did, and it will still fit. But then that was I think I almost bent this so poorly that it was not going to be reassembled properly. But I want to go through the manual with the adjustments I made on this to get things to work properly, because there was a lot of adjustment, and some of these were so fine that like even an eighth of a turn of a screw would mean the difference between it jamming or not clearing and working properly. Okay, so for sidewise alignment, which is this direction, what the manual says, for aligning I'm just gonna, so they call this the wedge section gears, these gears that are attached to the actual frame, like the transfer gears, and then they call these the registering dial intermediate gears, the ones that are above them. So I'm going to move the wedge section gear with my finger, and that's meshing with the intermediate dial gear thing up there. So that alignment is adjusted with this little plunger on a bracket back here. So let me move this around. Okay, so when I move the carriage left and right, which I'm going to do now, you see that's just kind of held in that whatever sidewise alignment by where this plunger is. Now I had to bend this plunger to be vertical with the rest of the machine, but adjusting this, there's just this screw right here. It's kind of hidden behind this thing. This is for division trip over on this side, but let's move this out of the way. Screw right here. There's 4 screws up here. This one was really hard to get out. I had to use a Dremel, but those can be adjusted left and right. This is pretty easy to do if you have the, you can kind of look, it's hard to do this with a camera, but you can either look from here, you can look from the front like I had earlier to get these aligned left and right, and then just tighten them back down. So that was a pretty easy alignment or adjustment to make first, because none of the other adjustments I made affected me aligning that. Once I had that aligned in the sidewise direction, it didn't ever lose alignment. Okay, so the next alignment is going to be carriage forward and backward. So like, moving the carriage that way. And there's 2 brackets. I guess they're called bearings in here, but first one is right here. It's marked M1 with a couple nuts on it, and then next one is also marked M1 with a little nut on there. So that's going to be this thing. Oh, sorry. This one, it's kind of behind the here, that thing. And then this one's easier to see. It's just right here. And then we have those 2 nuts right here and here. So with those loosened, you can move the position of the carriage forward and backward, and you can also align it, if you needed to move this end forward and this end backward to adjust like an angle like that. But those are the 2 adjustments on the rear that I was doing things with, and the ones in the front are a little more important, but I think these ones are probably good to do first, because anything I did with these 2 adjustments, I didn't have to readjust. There wasn't any kind of, oh, I need to go back now because another adjustment knocked it out of alignment. Okay, so the most important adjustment, in my opinion, I had issues with this on the CSA. In fact, I actually broke a transfer gear or a wedge gear on the CSA, the one right here on the end, because it was jamming when it was shifting. But this adjustment here controls these 2 screws are on the arms that lift the carriage. They also control where the carriage rests, because that basically just offsets it from downward. So if I screw these in clockwise, the carriage will be lifted up. But if these are too low, so if I back these screws all the way out, then it will probably jam. For me at least, it jammed when I was shifting the carriage. It would jam during division. That was probably the biggest issue, was just a lot of jamming. And when these are not backed out, or if these are backed out too far, then carrying will be an issue. So what I was doing to get these aligned right, there are some tests in the back of the book where it says, okay, type this in, and then, but honestly, the biggest issues I had with this alignment was carrying and jamming. So to check whether carrying was working or not, I would just go to this end, put it on repeat, and then subtract. So you can see that, with this with the extended carriage, we have it carrying or underflowing all the way to the end with the lower dials. The upper dials, this one doesn't carry because the little carry mechanism doesn't extend that far. But when this was backed out too far, I would maybe be able to carry to here, and then I would get zeros, or sometimes I would only carry like that far. So during division, obviously, if it's not carrying the underflow, it's not going to work properly. As long as it carries to here, it will still divide, but the remainder will be messed up because all these numbers back here will just kind of stay. And that's not really going to be that big of an issue. Honestly, I never mess with remainders, but that was something that was, if I move this screw specifically like an eighth of the turn out of where it's aligned right now, it either won't do a remainder properly or it will jam. Another thing that if these are backed out too far is that for me, especially with like the higher digits for the multiplier, I could maybe enter ones into the multiplier. But if I got to like a 7 or an 8 or a 9, oh, was that right? Let me make sure that was right. 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's right. But it wouldn't make it there. It would be like 6, 3, something else. So the multiplier wasn't entering properly. Really what this has been for me has been trying to get it lowered on both sides enough to where it will still carry underflow, overflow, whatever, but still not jam. And, obviously with this, there's a couple ways to look at it visually, but visually is would only get me so far, I guess. Like from this end, you can see the intermediate meshing gears. Let me focus that. Okay. So these are basically fully meshed. Like there's almost no clearance there at all. And on this side, I'm not sure I'll be able to see. This side was always really hard to see. Let's do this. I mean, you can't really see those too well. Maybe a little bit. I could maybe see it a little better if I looked visually, but you're just checking for the alignment with these gears up here with the wedge gears. But honestly, visually was not nearly enough. And the book says, or the manual says, put them to basically meshing and then back them out a half turn, which was not working for me either. But what I did was back them all the way in, turn them out about a half turn, maybe a full turn, and it wouldn't carry, so I would do this and that wouldn't work. Oh, is it working now? I think so. We just pull everything out. And then I would back down one of them. This one ended up being a little more important because, as you can see, I'm adjusting these two vertically, these little arms that it rests in, but it has to align all the way down on this end for the extended carry. So it's kind of like a lever. I don't know. I'm not. I really want to. I want to try to be as helpful with this as possible, but this was just very hard. Yeah, I don't know. Good luck with these ones. Okay, so I was having an issue with the multiplication operation buttons being locked up, so like the clear multiply button especially. And what that ended up being for me was this little screw right here, which pivots, there's a little pivot arm right here that pivots off of the transfer slide, which is currently locked because I'm in the first position. But I got the little page on the manual here. So this screw is going to push against 9B, which is basically going to lock and unlock this moving or the slide when you're doing a back transfer. So like I can move this because it's in not the first position. So there's a lot of stuff on this that basically gets engaged only in the first position. And then when you're not in the first position, other things, not only the little subcarriage they're calling this multiplication thing, but the multiplication buttons I'll talk about in a second. But I had to screw, let's see, move this back. So now that's locked in place. With this screw backed out a little bit, so I had to push mine in a little bit. This was fine in terms of like, this was not the issue. The issue was this little lock right here. So when this is engaged, if this doesn't push this arm far enough out, this little thing I'm moving right here, that's going to lock the multiplication. So I had to clear the clear multiply button right here. In any position, unless something is happening, that arm is usually free like this, so I can press this button. I'm going to do that thing. Let me do that again. This would be locked, so this wouldn't get pushed far enough into the first position for this to remain. So after I'd enter a multi-step thing like this, so I hit this button, locks in temporarily, this would not unlock. So I'd be trying to hit this button and it would be locked no matter where I was positioning that. So I just had to adjust this a little bit. And I guess while I'm here, I'll just go ahead and talk about this now. So there's a little nut right here, which is hinging this little arm, kind of. So when the carriage is not in the first position, this goes to the right, which pushes this over. And that changes how these keys operate, especially the clear multiply. So in this position, clear multiply is just going to send it home. So when this is engaged, this is going to, I guess it depends on whether there's something in the multiplier or not. Anyway, this had to be, the slide, or this little cover, had to be adjusted properly. I didn't have to mess with this nut. I almost did, but I was able to get things to work without that. But I think that was pretty much, I think that pretty much covers all the adjustments I made on this one. I guess I'll go ahead and mention this one because this was an issue I had with the CSA. It's just for clearing. If you are clearing something and it's not going all the way 0, like you'll get numbers to move to 9 maybe. These are little eccentric nut adjustments. So these little, it's hard to focus. There we go. There's a little nut and a screw, and the shaft is an eccentric shaft. So if you loosen the nut and you kind of, like I can maybe do this a little bit here, it will change where this is aligned. No, I've loosened it, so that's not good. But that's not, I messed with that a little bit on this one, didn't really need to, but that's something that it took me a long time to figure that one out on the CSA. So with clearing, if you're not getting all the numbers to go back to 0 and they're going all to like 9 instead of to 0, then that might be something to look at. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, when I reassembled the carriage, I think when I was making the video with the carriage, like the number wheels removed, I was talking about how to clear the upper dials, there's no like timing involved with where you position these gears, which is true. However, the intermediate gears, which mesh with the carriage gears, so this thing right here, you can see the little post on that tooth of the gear. Those have to all be aligned basically vertically downward like this when the carriage, the number wheels are at 0. So when those are, I'm gonna go ahead and move it to like a 1, or maybe an, yeah. Can I not do that? I can't do that. I'm gonna just underflow it. Now they're all 9. So now you can see it's moved there. So when this moves this direction, so when it passes over here, it bumps the little carryover lever. I'm gonna overflow it. If these are not aligned, these have to mesh properly. Basically all that means is it's not going to carry properly. So after I got this installed, it was carrying at like random numbers, like a 3 would carry over and like a 7 would carry over, and I just had to pop all the wheels out again and realign it. But just a heads up, that does need to be aligned when you're reinstalling the wheels. Alright, aesthetically I think these turned out okay. They have the same type of kind of plastic coating on them that the Facet LX I worked on has, where you can't, I mean, I didn't really want to buy gray paint, so I just cleaned it off in like the sink I almost put them in the dishwasher. Like I really want to do that with one of these and see what happens. But I did replace the kind of nasty felt liner with cork on all these, and that's something that I do with basically every machine I work on. Is that the felt ends up so nasty, like it's basically dryer lint that's held together with like motor oil. Like half of the nasty dirt and crap that gets all over the gears seems to come from the felt. So, I mean, this part sucks. It's always my least favorite part of this thing is, okay, stripping all the nastiness off, cutting the cork, getting it on there properly, but it does seem to reduce the noise suppression, so it's a little louder after I do this, especially because at this point I just use really thin cork because I've had enough issues with thicker cork, causing issues with getting stuck on things that I just gave up on that. But just wanted to mention that, and again, I'm really happy with Monroe, despite all the adjustments being really difficult to make, for just making something that's it seems to work pretty good, and it seems to last a long time without like just degrading. I didn't have a lot of parts that were incredibly difficult to free up or like clean off. This thing was, I honestly hardly cleaned this at all. The base of this thing, I kind of got some of the parts that were open, like the little gaps in here, but really happy with how this one ended up. All right, here's the completed CSA-10. The paint was kind of just a thing. I mean, I thought about stripping all of it off and making it chrome, but I figured this is probably good enough. This dent didn't end up being an issue after all, except with getting this thing back on. This plastic plate here, when I got it, it was broken. It turns out this thing actually shrank. And the only reason I figured that out was it had the button kind of. So these are lining up with the left side of the holes, and then these are lining up with the right side. Same thing up here with these buttons, and then the keyboard thing, I had to actually like lift this up to push it back in. I had super glued it. I found the part that had broken off inside, and I thought that it would be fine, but it just ended up breaking again when I put it back on. But at this point, it's fully functional, and I'm going to run through a few of the operations here. Okay, so I'm not going to go over every single feature on this thing because I had the video I made of the CSA-10, which is pretty similar. I mean, with this, you have the cumulative multiply button instead of the little lever. Negative multiply is going to be pretty much how it sounds. So if I have 4,000 and I want to subtract 4 times 56, that is right there. Let's see. So I think the best way to demonstrate the back transfer would be with a problem that you would not be able to do very conveniently or without having to copy down numbers on a normal automatic calculator. So this is, yep, okay. There we go. So there's my problem. I have a circle with a diameter of 10.81 inches, and I want to calculate the area of the circle. So with a automatic calculator that does not have back transfer, this one only has the back transfer from the accumulator to the multiplier. But let's say I wanted to do, I don't know, so 10.81, 10.81, I'm just going to do the automatic squaring. There's my diameter squared. Okay, so now I can either multiply that by pi. No, sorry, I can't do that. I can only divide it by 4, which I could do like this, but then I'd have to take that number, put it in the keyboard myself, so type it in and then multiply by pi. So that's the thing about these calculators is that trying to strategize how you're going to type something into a calculator. Like if a normal calculator, no one thinks about that. You just type it in. And with this, it's okay. At least with the multiplier, with the transfer slide here, let me show you what you can do. So I'm going to start off by doing the diameter squared. So 10.81 times, let's see, yep, times 10.81, automatic squaring. Yep. So that's the number, 116 point all that. And I can move this over. I can actually slide this all the way that way, clear the lower dials. Put it back. So now I have 116.85, whatever, in the multiplier. So I can multiply that by pi. So I'm going to do that times 3.14159. And there we go. I have it set up. So now I can just divide this by 4. So I'll clear the upper. And then, you know, I'm probably going to want to move this over. Hit divide. And there it is. The area of the circle is 91.778 square inches. So, I mean, that would not be impressive at all to someone that doesn't use these and have to try to strategize. Okay, I can't just type the numbers in. I gotta see what I can do first. The fact that I can transfer them back and forth. So, like, I could do that. I could put it into the accumulator. Multiply by 1, and then I could put it back. So the fact that I can store anything here, I can continuously do that. It's the one thing this doesn't do that would be the other half of the back transfer would be, okay, what can I do with the counter? Because once you've done a division, it's just, you're done. But this is, I'm excited to learn how to use this and like actually make use of it. That's transferred instead of just having to do a lot of intermediate steps and writing things down. Not a whole lot different about this. I'm trying to make sure I've covered everything here. Yeah, I think that's about it. I was going to do the half-cent lock again, but on mine apparently it's jammed the way that I put the carriage cover back on, and I don't care. But if you do, oh, that's where the thing is. So if you needed to like lock out the thing, you can press that down. I am probably going to cut that off or maybe just break it off because I don't want that.